May her soul rest in eternal peace.
Thank you, Chair. My name, Kosing David, MP Pokot South, West Pokot County. I have no interest to declare. The nominee knows, Honorable Chair. I have no interest to declare.
Thank you, Speaker. Mheshimiwa, congratulations on your nomination. My name is Abdul Rahim Daoud, MP for Nominees in Meru County. Thank you.
Good morning. I also want to say that Soipan used to be my friend, especially during the previous parliament. And I want to introduce myself as Honorable Mishi Mboko, MP Likoni constituency.
But we are still friends, Honorable Mishi. Are we not?
Past tense, let's leave it there.
And Nelson Arab Koech, a member of Parliament, Belgut constituency.
Thank you, Chair. Caleb Amisi, MP Saboti.
Didoraso, MP Saku.
Abdishuri, MP Balambala.
Masemeri, MP Teso South.
Thank you, Speaker. I must declare she is a distant sister-in-law, Ole tunaita shemeji. Honorable Mule, MP Matungulu.
David Gikaria, Nakuru Town is constituency. Nothing much to declare. I used to deputize her in a committee in 2013 in the 11th Parliament. Asante.
Mr. Chair, I wonder why everybody has to quantify whether they have anything to declare. But I do have. Naisula Lesuda, MP Samburu West, and Honorable Soipan is the first Maa woman nominated to be a cabinet secretary, and I am extremely proud of her, although that will not hinder my duty here during this vetting process.
Excellent. Honorable Tuya will engage with you for 90 minutes. Oh yes, I'm forgetting. We have our secretariat led by our clerk. I'm sorry, clerk. Introduce yourselves, please.
Thank you, Honorable Chairman. My name is Sarah Kyoko. I'm the acting clerk of the National Assembly, and I have with me Ms. Florence Abonyo, the director, Audit, Appropriation and other select committees, and Mr. Michael Karuru, who is the Deputy Director, Legal Services, together with other members of staff assisting this committee.
Thank you. Honorable Tuya, you have been a member of Parliament, so some of the members here are your colleagues. You've served with them. That notwithstanding, you're going to have an engagement with them to establish your suitability in discharging the duties for which the President has nominated you and forwarded you to Parliament for that purpose. The meeting here between the committee and yourself is going to be cordial, like it has been. That doesn't mean hard questions will not be asked if they are there. We advise you that communication be through the chair. You answer questions through the chair. Members ask questions through the chair. And we discourage an attempt to engage members directly. We will, after going through the preliminaries, give you 10 minutes for you to tell us the journey of your life to where you are. Thereafter, we'll have an engagement, and when we conclude, we'll give you another 3 minutes to recap what has transpired and your wish. In doing so, we want to ask you a few preliminaries in terms of documentation that you are asked to come with. If you have forwarded them to us, we'll expect you to have the originals to show the Secretariat to compare with what they have. If there's anything additional, they will tell me to ask you. Tax compliance certificate from KRA, do you have?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I do have it.
The Higher Education Loans Board clearance, you have?
Yes, I do.
Clearance with the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission?
Yes, I do.
Certificate of Good Conduct from DCI?
Yes.
Have you ever been charged and convicted in a court of law of any offense?
No.
Are you a dual citizen of any sovereign other than Kenya?
No, my only citizenship is Kenyan.
What is your financial net worth?
Honorable Speaker, if you will allow me to call you so.
Yes.
My total net worth is 156 million Kenya shillings.
Segregated as?
It largely comprises of immovable assets. I have 3 homes, one in Nairobi, one in Narok town, and another one in my village. Motor vehicles. I have apartments in Narok and also one in Nairobi. Plots of land, 2 in Kitengela, and also dairy business, and my shares from the Parliamentary Cooperative Society, Pakoso.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So what are your current and anticipated sources of income?
At the moment, I anticipate to get my gratuity from Parliament after serving for 2 terms, as well as pension. Those are the only 2.
Okay. We will give you 10 minutes to make a short opening speech to tell this committee the journey of your life to where you are. If you take less than 10 minutes, the better.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. My names are Rosalinda Soipan Tuya. Born and raised in Narok County. And I must at the onset say that I'm honored and privileged to be among the presidential nominees for cabinet. I take it as, for me, being the first ever Maasai woman to be elevated to such a position. It is a position of privilege for which I'm grateful, and I know the amount of responsibility that lies on my shoulders in that regard. I am a 4th child in a family of 7. Typically growing up, a typical village girl. I did tender to my father's cows and sheep alongside my older brother. I attended my primary school within Narok County in a school called Olololunga, or now Olentutu Arid Zone. And from the name, it's one of those institutions established under World Bank funding to support pastoralist communities. And I must say also that I finished my KCPE in that school and emerged as a top girl in the then Narok district. I proceeded on to my high school education in Moi Girls High School in Eldoret, but just for a short stint of 2 years, and had to transfer to the Kenya High School for health-related reasons, and completed my high school in 1998 from the Kenya High School. I proceeded to the University of Nairobi School of Law, where I graduated with a bachelor's degree in law in 2002, and immediately went on to the Kenya School of Law, for the Advocates Training Program, where I acquired a diploma in law. And thereafter, in 2004, got admitted to the bar as an advocate of the High Court of Kenya. And a few years later, after working for about 5 years, I secured a scholarship to study a Master of Laws in Sustainable International Development in the University of Washington in Seattle, USA. Honorable Chair, and I must say at this point that I consider myself a product of opportunity. And I say this because my father happens to be the only one of his 15 siblings to have acquired an education. And the story is long, but even his having to go to school was by chance. And in that regard, then, there followed a series of opportunities for my siblings and I, including a few of close family members. But the reason I emphasize this is because I have hundreds of cousins and close family members who have not had an opportunity like I did, just because my father had a chance to go to school. And that has been a driving force for me, because having started off as the village girl that I spoke about, up to a point where I had an opportunity to study abroad on a scholarship, the only difference for me and countless other young girls, and particularly from my community, is opportunity. And that has always pushed me to be able to find a space for that next girl, because I know how important it is to afford somebody an environment to explore their potential. Honorable Speaker, coming to my career progress in terms of work, and I will relate it with the docket for which I'm nominated. I must state that my love and passion for environment again began at a very tender age. My father happens to be a very strict environmentalist. I remember growing in the village, I learned from a very early age the value of a tree, because you could not cut the branch of a tree from my father's homestead without his permission. And that set the pace for me to know the value of the environment, the value of trees. And my nomination comes at a time when I think Kenyans and the citizens of the world, we need to embrace environmental ethics if we are to save ourselves. My first job assignment was with a local non-governmental organization called MPIDO, which basically focused on integrated pastoralist development initiatives. And I joined in as a legal officer, and one of my main assignments was public interest litigation, coordinating issues of land and environmental governance. And one of the cases that I got involved in at that early stage of my work was offering technical support and mobilizing resources to support the famous case of the Ilchamos community, centering around the effects of the prosopis plant, that invasive plant that has become a menace, not just for that community, but many other communities in this country. And I think with that early engagement, and it is coincidentally, at this point, it is an issue that we must confront as a country. And I think with my interaction then with fact-finding and establishing ways of making sure that these communities do not have to suffer the effects of an invasive plant for which they had no contribution to its existence, sets me in a good place to be able to find a once and for all lasting solution, not just for prosopis. We have many other invasive tree species, like the cactus in the north. We have the hyacinth, which is choking our water bodies, and many others. At that point, I also got to participate in various regional and international fora, still in the area of land and natural resource management and governance. This include the African Commission for Human and People's Rights at the regional level. I also got to participate in various fora of the UN Permanent Forum for Indigenous Peoples, including being a member of the Indigenous Women's Caucus that again focused on matters climate change and the role that women played in matters mitigation and resilience. My second job appointment, Honorable Chair, was in the Ministry of Justice and Constitutional Affairs then. I got seconded to the ministry as a UN volunteer specialist, and most of my work revolved around providing technical support in the development of the then National Action Plan and Policy for Human Rights. I also got to engage in developing policy briefs focusing on Kenya's obligations arising from regional and international human rights instruments. And after that, I joined the Kituo cha Sheria. It's an access to justice organization. I joined in as a legal aid coordinator and then again served on a very brief stint as the acting executive director. Most of my work again centered on public interest litigation, supporting indigent Kenyans, and notable cases that we dealt with which relate to the docket for which I'm nominated. I dealt with a case in the Tana Delta ecosystem, focusing on the environmental impact of government projects in very fragile ecosystems. Another one was a matter concerning rampant cancer cases in Marsabit County, largely attributed to oil exploration initiatives in that region. And what we were looking at and prosecuting on behalf of the communities as an interested party, Kituo cha Sheria, was to make sure that we insisted on the sustainability of any initiatives that would be established within community lands. Another case that I remember is a case in Mutomo area of Machakos County, pitting the Mutomo residents against multinational.
And every speaker here has spoken passionately about the opportunities that we have, from textile to leather to the whole array of opportunities in housing, in SME, and the whole array of that. I just want to promise you one thing, that this administration will work with you every step of the way until we redeem all the opportunities that are available for us as a country. You have persuaded me that it is possible for us to create 1 million jobs from the manufacturing sector. You have persuaded me that it is possible for us to move the contribution of our GDP from manufacturing from 7% to 20% in 8 years. So all that is standing between us and 20% contribution from manufacturing and 1 million jobs, and all the opportunities that you have ably elaborated this morning, is continuous engagement, continuous consultation, working together, and everybody realizing that nobody has the monopoly of good ideas, sharing those ideas, and making sure that we move together as a country. I promise you, ladies and gentlemen, that I will be available, my administration will be available, the CS, Moses Kuria and his team will be available, our CS for Treasury will be available, so that we can actualize all these opportunities together. you have said ably, and if you've gone through our plan, from the whole array, from, for example, leather. We've had this conversation about leather. There is absolutely no reason why today we should not be a champion in the whole leather products space, because we are slaughtering 3 million livestock every year. We have the third largest herd in this continent. Yet we are importing 110 billion worth of leather products into Kenya. It completely doesn't make sense. As has been said here, we can increase our revenues. We can increase the contribution of leather to our GDP from the current 15 billion to 75 billion, because we have everything to make that a reality. I want to promise you that we are very clear about what we want to do in the leather space. We are very clear about what we want to do in the textile space, because we believe that therein lies the opportunity for us to create jobs and create wealth. And therefore, this conversation this morning is a very important conversation to me and to every Kenyan that is listening to us. You have said yourselves very ably, we have 16 million kids in school. They need a pair of shoes every year. We only produce 4 million pairs of shoes. Never mind all the leather products that would come with it. And we have the raw material right here. The raw material is rotting, and yet we are importing leather products, shoes, using other people's hides and skin when ours is going to waste. It doesn't require any genius. You know, we don't have, there is nothing for us to have a conversation about. We just need to connect our raw materials to the market, jobs in between, money in between, and all of us will be doing well. So it is my intention that this great potential that we've always had, the great opportunity that we have always had, we must make it a reality in the next couple of years. And I am prepared, I am willing to work with you in that space. All the paperwork has been done. All the plans have been documented. All we need to do is to plug and play. Make sure we bring this to a reality. And ladies and gentlemen, I am here, lock, stock, and barrel to work with you so that we can actualize those opportunities. The leather space, the cotton value chain is a big value chain that can give us all the jobs we need. You've just heard here, we have a market already negotiated by policymakers. $150 billion or $300 billion market. We are only doing $500 million on textile. We have the biggest resources around Kenya. We have the Dongo Kundu Special Economic Zone, which is going to be a huge plan for us. We have the Naivasha Industrial Zone, which is going to be another big investment opportunity for us as an administration, so that we can leverage on the steam that we have for free. We can leverage on the energy at a lower cost, and we can build the whole ecosystem that will aggregate what we are producing. Listening to the small producers that I listen to outside here, and listening to Tesh, it speaks to the power of aggregation. How do we make sure that every small producer and every small manufacturer and everybody who is adding some value to some product is aggregated and made possible for them to access the markets? I just want to ask industry, the captains of industry sitting here. Ladies and gentlemen, there is absolutely no reason why we are selling our tea unprocessed 95% in a space where we have the biggest competitive advantage. I want to promise you that whatever government is supposed to do, I have already had a conversation with our tea marketers, and I have told them that if it is required of me to invest in a common user facility so that we can add value to our tea, the government of Kenya is going to invest in a common user facility. It is not going to be possible and practical for us to continue to export our tea unprocessed. 95% of it, we are getting 120 billion now. We can get 300-400 billion shillings by merely adding value, period. The farmers are already working too hard to produce the tea. Who is failing our farmers? Our manufacturers. You guys. You're failing our farmers. Our farmers are producing all the tea, the third largest producer in the world, on half an acre, on 1 acre, on 2 acres. What we are doing, we are failing them because we are not adding value to what they are producing. We are continuing to sell our tea in the auction. We are getting peanuts for it, and many other people who do not have a single push, who do not have a single bush of tea, are making more money than us. Good people, our manufacturers, give us the value of our tea. You are the people who is standing between us and money. True? Our farmers are working so hard with close to 30 million units of herd of livestock. They have 3 million hides and skins every year. Is it being eaten by dogs? It's rotting. It's being buried in some places. When I went around Kenya with our economic fora, this was the issue everywhere. Mandera, Wajir, Tana River, the whole of that space, Kajiado. Farmers were asking us, we are livestock keepers were asking us, what are we going to do with our skin? Who is this group of people standing between us and the value that we can get from our skins and hides? You people. You are the people standing between us and 75 billion of product that we can sell. And we have a ready market, starting from our own children in school. Even the local market in Kenya alone, we are importing 12-15 million pairs of shoes alone every year. Market is not the problem. Raw material is not the problem. The problem is the people to add value. They are sitting right here. True or not true? So, good people, as I said earlier, we must have a different conversation. We're having a conversation here about, you see, we have a problem with VAT refund. How does VAT refund stop us from adding value to the hides and skins that are going to waste? Muniambie. You know? So, and I'm not saying that there are no challenges. There are challenges. But there are bigger opportunities than challenges in our space in Kenya. Let us focus more in the opportunities that exist and less in the challenges that we have. We can overcome the challenges by leveraging on the huge opportunity that we have. We have a huge market in EAC, in Africa Continental Free Trade Area. We now have the market infrastructure for us to take over the market in our continent. The reason why our continent is importing milk, powder, food, is because Kenya has not taken its place. Kenya is supposed to be the country that would position Africa appropriately to be able to make sure that we supply every commodity, every product that we should. Instead, we are having a quarrel, small quarrel. Oh, Uganda is bringing cheaper milk. Uganda should bring cheaper milk because they can produce it much more cheaply. We should be adding value to our own milk. We add value to our own milk, and I want to say here, we had a program of improving on our milk value chain. We had first 300 milk coolers. That product was sabotaged. That program was sabotaged because of interest. But I have gone back to that product. We are going to have another 660 milk coolers. We are going to add value to our milk. What we should be doing is our milk from our farmers. We should be adding value, producing butter, using it to produce powder, and go and sell it in DRC, go and sell it in Central Africa, go and sell it in West Africa. And then we get the cheaper milk from Uganda and we drink. Sindio? Yeah. Instead of having a quarrel with Uganda, why are we having a quarrel with Uganda? We are having a quarrel with Uganda because we have refused to take our rightful place in our continent. We should have made more steps and allow Uganda to come and occupy the next place as we move ahead. Are we together, good people? So we must have a different conversation. And I am happy that Moses is here. I have confidence in what Moses can do. I know he has a good brain. And working with you guys, yeah. This Moses Kuria, forget about the noise sometimes he makes. I promise you, he has a good brain. So we're going to work together in this space. And I want to give you know very well that I am not a lazy person. Yeah? So I will work with you and I will make sure that whatever opportunities that can be actualized, working together with you, we actualize those opportunities and move our manufacturing to 20% of our GDP in the next couple of years, 8 years, if not less. Access to credit is a big component of our plan. Financing is going to be a big component of our plan. There are some that we can cover with the Hustler Fund, but of course we have the Kenya KDC. KDC is going to cover your space. That is the area where we need to raise capital for industrialization, capital for manufacturing, capital for value addition, so that we can work with the SMEs, make sure they have access to credit, but also build the capacity of our Kenya Development Corporation so that we can also have resources available for the people in your space. So, good people, I am very happy this morning that we are having a progressive conversation. And I am very confident that going into the future, Kenya is going to move to the next level in our manufacturing and industrialization scale. I am looking forward, as we have all said, by 2030, we should be producing 1 million more jobs from manufacturing. We should take our manufacturing from the current 1 trillion of our GDP to maybe 3 or 4 trillion of our GDP. We should be able to move our contribution in terms of tax revenues and be able to work together. And I understand, and Mburu here will tell you, I have had a very intense conversation with him on matters tax. Yes. I've had a very intensive conversation with him. I have asked him very difficult questions because part of our revenue gets lost because the stamps that you use on your manufactured goods, we have more fake stamps than genuine stamps. How is that possible? You know, we have to sort that out because we are losing revenue. Part of why our contribution of manufacturing to GDP in terms of revenue is low is because very many people pocket our money, or the money meant for taxes. So we're going to reform that space. Mr. Mburu and his team have very clear instructions for me on where we should go. I believe that in the next 2 years, we should be able to move our revenues from 2 trillion to 3 trillion, and to double it in the next 5 years. Many people may not like that story because it means we are all paying taxes. But I'm sorry, everybody, we must all pay taxes, and I will lead the way by paying taxes. There will be no exemptions for people who are politically connected. There will be no exemptions for nobody. It's going to be the same yardstick for everybody. Are we together? That's the direction we are going to go. And I want to promise you, good people, that we will also make our tax regime predictable. I agree with you. I agree with you. Investments in manufacturing are long-term investments. You need a predictable tax regime so that you can know how your investments are going to look like. I agree with our good brother who said we need to reform our income tax, our income tax law, so that again we make it up to date. There are too many patches of it. Nobody knows how it looked like in the first place. So I agree with you that we need to do some work around that space. But as I work hard with our legislators to be able to improve that space, please make the opportunities that we have in this manufacturing space a reality for our country. It's good for your businesses. It's good for our agenda of job creation. It's good for our agenda of export-led growth, and it's good for everybody. So let me leave it there. I'm sorry. I really should have given more time to this meeting. I did not, I underestimated what we were coming to do here, but I promise that the next time I will give you more time because you are speaking the language of taking Kenya to the future. Asanteni sana, and I know there is a small function here to award some people. I hope we can do that in 2-3 minutes so that you can allow me to be engaged somewhere else. Asanteni sana, and God bless you.
Thank you, Your Excellency. We will award SMEs, and the first one, Your Excellency, is winner in Human Resource Management, and it goes to B. Care Apiaries. Quickly, please. B. Care Apiaries, that's the first award. The second award.
President William Ruto addressing a forum on the Kenya Manufacturing Center. President William Ruto urging the manufacturers to work hard in ensuring that the milk product in the country is having an improved value, and his government will continue to support the initiative towards greater heights. And also the vetting exercise for the cabinet secretaries is underway at the county hall. I now take you to the county hall where the environment secretary nominee Soipan Tuya is currently facing the MPs. My name is Irene Chimodem. On sign language interpretation, we have Lensa Odingo. We continue to bring you live coverage on unmatched events. Now over to County Hall.
We'll settle the question on anybody encroaching, and it is not just Mau. The Mount Kenya forest, Aberdares, and the many forests across our country it is not a question of whether or not we need to conserve our environment and our forests, and I'm very clear in my mind about that. Honorable Robert Mbui and Honorable Speaker, the question about the eyes have its story, I will not delve into it as you have properly ruled, but I'm happy that the Honorable Mbui says he was in Parliament, and I think I remember he was there and he knows exactly what happened, and I was completely within the ambit of Article 115 of the Constitution and the standing orders, and I will not delve much into that. The second question raised by the Honorable Robert Mbui is concerning the remarks made by His Excellency the Deputy President, Rigathi Gachagua, concerning matters the Shamba system. I know the Honorable Deputy President addressed himself to the issue and made some clarification on what exactly he meant. And without dwelling on that, I would like to say that under our Forest Management Act of 2016, we have a process of engagement between the Kenya Forest Service and forest adjacent communities. And this is a process called the PELIS scheme, which is plantation, establishment, and livelihood support, PELIS. And what this scheme is about collaboration between the Kenya Forest Service and communities adjacent to the forest in participatory forest management agreements through community forest associations, where these communities are allowed to get into the forest. Actually, I will correct that. It's not get into the forest. The forest adjacent communities are allowed to collaborate with the Kenya Forest Service in restoration of plantation forests. And it is instructive to note that under our gazetted forests, 96% consists of natural forests and 4% consists of commercial plantation forests. And the PELIS scheme is operated within the plantation forest and not the natural forests, where communities have access. Once the plantations are cleared, they get seeds and seedlings from the Kenya Forest Service. They plant the trees alongside short-term crops, and within that arrangement, the maize plantations are not allowed within the plantations, and it is a sustainable way of involving the communities in restoration of the forest, but at the same time deriving a livelihood from it. It has been a subject of abuse in some instances, and therefore it requires a lot of keen interest in enforcement and ensuring that it is done in conformity with the sustainable forest management systems. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you. We'll take another batch. Owen Baya, Daud, nianzie nyuma. Haya, Naisula, Gikaria, Mule, and Daud, I had mentioned you.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, Chair. Honorable Soipan, allow me to call you Soipan. Climate change is a controversial subject. At one time, Donald Trump said it is a hoax. And the conservatives and the Republicans in the United States say that climate change is something that was mooted by the liberals to make money and for commercial purposes, so that they can set NGOs, hold big conferences, and make money. But absolutely, climate change is what the Supreme Court would say hot air. sometimes...
You're quoting somebody, or that's what you believe?
I'm quoting.
Oh, okay.
I'm quoting. Now, my point is this. When does this climate change thing start and end, especially in terms of looking at the balance between food for people and climate conservation or conservation? Because I have a case where people are told, do not fish. Because if you fish, this and this will happen because climate change says so. Don't use this certain fishing net, because if you use this fishing net, it will interfere with the ecosystem in the flow bed of the ocean. So people go hungry, and yet they live by the riverbank, they live by the ocean, just because of climate change. People cannot get firewood, you know, and they have to use the little disposable income they have to buy gas or other things because they cannot go to the forest to pick firewood. Where does it end? Do we want to impoverish our people because of climate change? What are your thoughts? What is your belief? What do you think? Do you believe like the Democrats or the Liberals about climate change? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. Mheshimiwa Soipan. What are some of the recycling methods that you think this country can employ, keeping in mind that all the rubbish waste in the counties are dumped mostly in forested areas, and there is no way of you here in Mombasa, in Meru, in Kisumu, in all the big towns, there's so much rubbish everywhere. But disposing it off, it all goes to the forested areas. In your opinion, or in your policy directions, how are you going to tackle the rubbish, and what could be recycled? What would be the policy? Regarding carbon credits, what is your take on carbon credits?
Thank you, Chair. To the nominee, there are communities that are actually embracing conservation, and I'll use an example of my community who live around Kirisia Forest, who in 2019 voluntarily moved out of the forest and conserving the forest. Now my question is, how do you intend to enhance participatory forest management and ensuring the forestry sector makes a contribution to poverty eradication? And my second question is this whole issue of corruption. I've seen that this administration is very keen, which is a good thing, on planting of trees, and a lot of money will be allocated to your ministry. And you know, as Kenyans, we get worried when we see a certain project at a certain time receiving so much money, knowing that someone can easily say, I planted trees and there was no rain and the trees died. So how do you ensure that you make sure that then this doesn't become a big scam?
Thank you, Chair. This climate change is actually, it is real, though by saying is hot air. You know, and I'm saying this, if you come to Nakuru, the Rift Valley basically, in Baringo, where we have Lake Bogoria, Lake Nakuru, Naivasha, the lakes are swelling to unimaginable levels. Actually, like in Nakuru, it has already consumed over 70 staff quarters. They are submerged already. It has taken out the 2 gates, and it's a concern. And also in Baringo, Lake Bogoria, and the ecosystem within that area is really, and it is. But in the process, Madam Soipan, is that there was a blessing that as the lakes were swelling, first there was not a blessing. First there was an issue of the lake swelling and consuming private land, where people own land, they have title deeds. And when the water was rising, it actually displaced almost 5,000 acres, and the owners were never compensated. But with that came with some blessing, where I don't know where fish came from. And there was a lot of fish suddenly. There was a Mzungu who was doing fish farming, and those ponds broke, and I think all the fish went, and the population. But now here is a Kenyan whose land has been consumed by the water, and fish is there. And when they go to fish on their farm, but water from the lake, they are arrested. I mean, it doesn't make sense. I'm fishing from my land, and you are arresting me. And it is serious. I said, I think just the other day, just last week, 2 young boys were jailed for 4 years. I was telling about when we had, I think it was Kindiki, on matters to do with the pro bono thing by the government. So I would really want you to address why KWS would arrest, and yet the boundaries of KWS or Lake Nakuru, as it is known, the park, they are known. But people are fishing outside the boundary and they are being arrested. So this is something that I would want KWS and maybe to give us some answers as to what would be happening. What is the compensation even for the people who are these are just normal people earning a living.
Thank you, Kikaria.
The last one,
we've heard the story.
So the question is, what measures are you going to take so that people can be able to earn a living out of their own land? Secondly, is that Kenya hosts the headquarters of both the United Nations Environment Programme, UNEP, and the UN Habitat. How do you intend to ensure that the country is at its forefront of protecting existing forest, expansion of afforestation, and promotion of sustainable and clean environment? Thank you.
Mole.
Thank you very much. This goes to the nominee. As you are aware, Honorable Soipan, Kenya is a signatory to COP26, the United Nations Climate Change Conference, which happened last year. And the declaration is very clear that deforestation and land use must be put to the proper use. But this brings me the question whereby the appetite of land buying companies going for the large scale land within the country and subdividing it into very small pieces for profit making and leaving the host community in variable situation whereby animal migration for the pastoralists not to move from one corner to the other to subdivide, and that also caused conflict between tribes and neighbors within the country. I would wish to hear what is your interventions and to be employed to deal with this issue to ensure that we have a sustainable land use in this country. And do you propose what probably is happening in some countries like Rwanda, whereby they are collapsing villages and building town villages and leaving the vast land for the better use of land within the country for both agricultural and grazing? Thank you.
We can take one more. Emase.
Thank you. The nominee. Conservation is a function of both county and national government. What plans do you have? How will you ensure that there is collaboration in environment conservation between the two levels of government? We are aware that because of the diminishing sizes of land, our farmers are basically farming on every piece of land. There is serious deforestation, especially for some of us who come from hilly areas. You know, people have cut all the trees and they're trying to plant something to be able to put food on the table. So how are you going to collaborate with county government to ensure that we address the challenges? Thank you.
So, Pani, you can answer those 6.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. I think the first question was from Honorable Bayer. For sure, the climate change crisis is not a hoax. When you turn around, right from, and I know the Honorable Bayer knows, because even in the coastal regions, the kind of changes that we are seeing of destruction of very sensitive ecological zones is causing untold damage. The prolonged droughts that we are facing in our arid and semi-arid areas are unprecedented. The rising lakes that Honorable Gikaria is talking about, the floods that are wreaking havoc left, right, and center. But the key question that Honorable Bayer raises is how do we strike a balance between focusing on a climate action while ensuring that we do not compromise the livelihood concerns of our communities. And I will quote our Kenya Kwanza Alliance manifesto on the chapter on environment. We talk about the planet, the people, and profit. And when we talk about waste management, when we talk about the issues of climate smart agriculture, it is intended to help our people to adapt as well as grow resilience to combat the negative effects of climate change. And again, we are at a point where we need to critically focus on the policy directions that we need to take, as well as engagements at the global level to make sure that we arrest the adverse effects of climate change on our people without impoverishing them. So yes, the climate change crisis is real. Honorable Dawood, in terms of the recycling modules, I had mentioned earlier that we have a new law, 2022 Act on Sustainable Waste Management. It is very ambitious, but I believe we can do it. We need to move from a linear economy of single use of some materials which can be recycled to create employment for our people, as well as to reduce waste. And the underlying principle is that of reuse, recycle, and reduce. And that is the model that is cross-cutting in the Sustainable Waste Management Act. And underlying that is one of the major principles of sustainable development, which is the polluter pays principle. And that's what we are talking about. Our producers, our manufacturers, it is high time that we take responsibility right from the source of where we are manufacturing our goods and services, our goods particularly, to make sure that our manufacturers take responsibility. If it is a bottle of plastic, water bottle, we have banned plastics, single-use carrier bags, and the flat bags. There has been a modification because of certain packaging, which are allowed upon licensing. But really the direction we should be looking at is, because plastic is a petroleum product, and they contribute to a very high release or emission of greenhouse gas emissions in this country. And we need to get into a serious discussion. I know it has been very controversial and a lot of resistance from here and there, but we need to get into a serious discussion where between the national government, the county governments, the private sector, non-state actors, to know that whatever directions that we need to take, they may be hard and painful, but that is what we must do in order to save ourselves from the choking of the waste that we are seeing. So I think circular economy is the way to go. And when we start with the basics of how we handle our waste, right from the domestic level to the waste service provider, to the county governments in terms of how to deal with our landfills, which are an eyesore everywhere. The Dandora landfill that we have here. We have countless young people, and for lack of a better term, I would call them the landfill community. Young people who are always scavenging and ravaging through the the likes of Dandora dam sites, we can convert that into an economic, an income generating activity for them in collaboration with recyclers and different players to have our country move from linear to circular economy. On the question of carbon credits, my take is that we have a huge opportunity lying under the carbon trading practice. We might not have explored it to our greatest potential. The first place to start is to start with a policy on carbon trading, and being that we are having a discussion here with the Parliamentary Committee, I think it's a direction that we need to take, because as we talk about climate action, we must explore alternative sources of funding. Because when we talk about, they call it the just transition, for example, going 100% green, it calls for resources, it calls for technology, and carbon trading is one source of, potential source of funding that we need to explore. I know certain entities like KenGen are already successfully trading in carbon, and certain non-governmental organizations. We have a lot to learn and to actualize this, because it is possible for us to do this. Honorable Lesuda, Kirisia forest actually is a very good example of communities taking part in, contributing to restoration of our natural resources. The participatory forest management is a very potent and important consideration, particularly with regard to community forests, which are under the county governments. Either through the PELIS process, where with close monitoring, awareness creation, and good collaboration between the Kenya Forest Service and the communities organized through community forest associations, this is possible, where then we will be having a symbiotic relationship between the government in terms of communities participating in enhancing our tree and forest cover, while at the same time getting tangible benefits from forest resources. The question of corruption, it is real, and the President has made a clear declaration of a very ambitious tree planting exercise, which I think is the way to go, and an increase of funding to the Ministry of Environment. I will be keen, as the Cabinet Secretary once confirmed, charged with this very critical docket, to make sure that there is strict adherence to the procedures that are there to make sure that we have proper accountability and proper use of resources. And we will be moving from tree planting to tree growing. So we have to come up with a sustainable model where we are not planting trees and moving away, but growing, including how the trees will be nurtured to maturity. And I want to promise Kenyans that under my watch and guard, there will be tangible and visible results in this area. Again, we have KEFRI, KEFRI is involved with a lot of research into making sure that even as we embark on tree planting and tree growing, we will be doing species matching, so that we don't do haphazard kind of tree growing across the country, making sure that different ecological zones are matched with tree species that can actually thrive in the particular areas. Honorable Gikaria, yes, climate change is real. I have said that. And this is a matter that we'll need to look into. Your question is closely linked with that of Honorable Bayer, to make sure that as we run to embrace climate action, we must match it with the need to take care of the livelihood needs of our communities and our people, and particularly with the question of rising lakes and drought and all these other adverse effects. So yes, it is something that I will take up to look into it, to make sure that we have a comprehensive plan, so that we don't focus so much on achieving a reduction in our greenhouse gas emissions while Kenyans are suffering in the process of the approaches we are using. Nairobi is a global city, being I think in the whole of the global south, it is only in Nairobi where we are hosting a UN agency, and it's none other than the UNEP, which is a very key agency in the issues that we are discussing, or those that are under my docket. The UN Habitat, again, is domiciled right here. The United Nations office in Nairobi. This presents a huge opportunity when we are speaking about the need to meet our obligations under the Paris Agreement. I will be, once confirmed, taking proactive steps towards establishing a working modality with these very strategic UN agencies within our reach in order to realize our vision and ambitions around climate action and environmental protection. Honorable Mule, yes, COP 26, and we are in the run-up to the COP 27, which will be held in Egypt in the next few weeks, a week or so. And you have raised the question about, how we will make sure that the land use plans that are being, actualized, or, the practice around large-scale land buyers. This is an issue which will require an interministerial approach. The Ministry of Lands has a big chunk of a responsibility to play with regards to land use planning. And I know within the cabinet we have thematic committees, and this is an issue of grave concern that I will be taking up with my colleague in the lands docket to make sure that we are having sustainable land use plans before any project is actualized. And again, NEMA is under my docket, the docket that I'm interviewing for. And land use planning, the need for very serious environmental impact assessments to be done before any such projects are set up, is an issue that I will be taking up once confirmed for this position. Honorable Emase, the need for close collaboration between the county and national government, that cannot be overemphasized. The fourth schedule of our constitution, in dividing the functions on environment between national and county government, the function of environment, the conservation of the environment and natural resources lies squarely within the national government. But at the same time, the questions of air pollution, noise pollution are devolved. And again, under the fourth schedule, we have certain national government policies that the counties are mandated to implement with regard to soil and water conservation and even forestry. So you find that there's a very intricate link between what is to be done by the national government and what is to be done by the county government. And that leaves me with a responsibility to take up the need to engage with the Council of Governors to make sure that we are well coordinated and we see some good results in the area's environment. Thank you.
Thank you. Koech, Amisi, Raso, Ferdinand. Oh, Sharia, you want? You have not done the right thing. Raise your flag. Yes. So let's start with Koech, Amisi, Sharia, Raso, Sharia. Then we come to Rehab. We come to Ferdinand. We can take all of you now. Soipan, you'll take all these honorable members' concerns. Each one of you, one issue, please.
Okay.
Koech.
Thank you, Chair.
Mishi, did you raise as well? Okay, you'll be the last.
Thank you, Honorable Soipan. You mentioned the issue of Mao. You and I have been very passionate, but on different ends, about restoration of Mao. First of all, it's done now. It's been restored, and the fencing, and we fully support it. But in the process, many of the people who were pushed out of Mao still hang around there. It's still a problem to the forest and to themselves, because they are grouped in villages, small villages around the forest, which is a threat again, because they might just go back. And I think it is important that we find a long-lasting solution, either it is going to be interministerial to relocate all those who were evicted out of Mao in a more neater way than the way it was done before. I would like to know your take on this, Madam Soipan.
Thank you, Chair. And Chair, allow me to say this. We normally rebuke and admonish corruption and scoffs at those culprits, but we never praise and honor those who keep their hands off the public offer. And you can see from this file, there's no any matter of corruption raised against the nominee, and for that I want to praise you for that. And I hope you will continue keeping your hands off the public offers. You are not going to be assimilated. Over to that, my question is, of course, that this docket you have been given, you are going to be at the center of climate change. Climate change has become the global discourse. Each and every president at the UN address is always on climate change. Can you help Kenyans understand the various protocols and agreements, right from the Kyoto Protocol, the Paris Agreement, all the agreements that Kenyans has, and the success of it as a country?
Russell.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Honorable Soipan, congratulations for your nomination. My question is on conservancies. What is coming up in recent times is individuals, groups, and NGOs are coming up with conservancies whose management falls outside the realm of government. And yet we know KWS and KFS are the two bodies that are vested with conservation, both physical and otherwise. What is your take in terms of having a centralized management system in terms of achieving synergy in conservation? Also on the same, Marsabit Forest and Marsabit National Park actually is the only park in the county of Marsabit. But yet currently we are experiencing the issue of animals straying outside the park and destroying people's properties and shambas. But the Act 2015 that was passed in the 11th Parliament was supposed to provide compensation. So do we still believe in that act if it cannot be enforced? Thank you, Chair.
Sharia.
Chair, I'll pass. My question was asked by
Thank you.
Mheshimiwa.
Thank you, Chair.
You should emulate Sharia.
Okay, Chair. My concern is about the rapid population growth in our urban cities. What will you do to ensure sustainable use of the environment and natural resources? For example, in your county, Kajiado, if you go to Kitengera, you'll see that the residents and the manufacturing, they are next doors, and many children are developing chest and respiratory problems. I don't know what you are going to do. I think I need to hear because I think I would suggest you work with the county government. They do proper planning. Thank you.
Ferdinand, the Honorable.
Soipan, congratulations for being nominated for this position, and I think from what you have presented today, I want to say congratulations too, because you seem to understand the ministry, the problem with the ministry and where we are. If you keep it up like that, I think the problem we have in this country will be a problem of the past. However, we may do so much as a country, but our neighbors, what mechanism are you going to employ to bring the cooperation between Kenya and the neighboring states, particularly the West, so that whatever we are doing here is actually copied elsewhere? Because climate change, I think, is basically a frustration out of you. We may do so much, and from what you are saying, then of course our neighbors don't do anything, so we just back to square one. So what are you doing? What are you going to do to be able to cooperate with the neighboring states? Because of the world in which we are today, seriously, actually, we just have to do something. But I think you're up to the task. Thank you.
Good. That's just a comment. Well done.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman. Mheshimiwa Soipan, let me hear your views as regards riverine afforestation, because we seem to be blaming climatic change for our rivers drying up, as a result of which population does not have water. Many of the rivers are now dry. They either be restored through massive afforestation, or we will just forget about ever having permanent rivers in Kenya. Number two, what about sand harvesting? Another man's destructive activity, which is happening across the country. When these rivers dry up, people descend on them to make wealth by harvesting sand and selling it, as a result of which the problem deteriorates. What are your views on this?
Posing.
Thank you, Chair. Honorable Soipan, I would like to hear, and many Kenyans would like to hear, what will you do that will really be like either a change or something new, or something that will go into record that you came and you did when you're not the Minister for Environment, if this Parliament approves you. And I'm taking an example. If people were to talk about the late Michuki, they will remember Nairobi River. Your predecessor, people will remember about Mao. So what will you be remembered as Honorable Soipan having done? I don't think if these international meetings and so on will make you a name. What will make you a name? And finally, when people talk about environment, Honorable Chair, through you, Honorable Soipan, people talk about green areas. They talk about Mount Kenya, come to Mao, come to Nairobi. What about the drought that is going on now in this country? What is the relationship between that and also an environment? And when will the Minister for Environment will be known in the entire area from Lodwar to Tana River? Thank you, Chair.
Monsieur, the Honorable.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. To the nominee, I just want to talk about two areas which I feel that the minister, or rather the government, has not tapped on the potential it has. One, it is the issue of the mangrove forest, which is in Lamu and Tana River, and it's about 60% of the mangrove in Kenya. That is an area which you need to look at and know what plans you have to ensure that as part of afforestation, you can tap on that. The other issue is our econ tree, the baobab. The information we're having right now, it is that there is a certain organization, and I think the name is Ariba Seaweed International Limited, which they have employed some guys in the area of Kilifi Tezo. They uproot these baobab trees and they transport it to Georgia in United States of America. So I think Kenya is a signatory to the Declaration on Deforestation and Land Use. So you need to check on this area and see how you can rescue these icon trees. The other issue, I want to echo what Mheshimiwa Mukami has just said on the issue of environmental assessment. We have mining in Coast Region in Kwale, and that is the titanium. So recently what we have found is there is some negative effect in terms of disease, and there is skin disease. So many people experiencing a skin disease as a result of the titanium. So this is also an area you need also to know. Anytime there is mining, you need to do an effective environmental assessment to know the impact, whether negative and even positive. I thank you.
Thank you. Soipan, you can proceed to answer or respond to those.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. We'll start with a question by the Honorable Nelson Koech on the Mau Forest, the plight of the evictees. I know it's the subject of a court ruling that was made recently, but I must state that just like I said, in the process of conserving our environment, we must not forget the plight of Kenyans affected by certain actions that happen. Kenya is right in step with regards to the international standards on evictions and what to do with people affected by such evictions. And these are Kenyans, even from a human rights perspective, who still have dignity bestowed upon them. And I will not talk much about it. I don't know if the case is a subject of appeal, but it definitely is a matter that we cannot close our eyes to in terms of the plight of the affected communities. Honorable Amisi, I will make sure to keep my hands off the public coffers, so that if I ever get vetted by any such committee of parliament, that my file remains clean. On the global discourse around climate change, yes, Kenya is signatory to the Paris Agreement and the attendant Kyoto Protocol. We have so many other multilateral environmental agreements that Kenya is party to. Actually, the ministry has a fully fledged department that deals with multilateral environmental agreements. They come with a number of obligations and frameworks for engagement of Kenya with the globe, with the nations of the globe. From my past experience as a lawyer and having worked in various capacities with international and regional fora, I'm going to make sure that Kenyans gain maximally from each and every instrument, regional or international, that we sign to ensure complete domestication according to the Constitution. Honorable Dido Raso, the question of conservancies and the uncoordinated manner of conservancies, I think this is an area which falls squarely on my colleague in the docket of tourism and wildlife, because the conservancies are not actually under the Ministry of Environment and Forestry. But I always struggle between where does the conservation of the environment start and where does that of conservation and management of our wildlife start. I mean, they are very closely linked. That I know that in the course of my duty, once confirmed for this, I will have to confront such matters, because it is conservancies are everything to do with the environment. Conservancies and wildlife are actually about it's about conservation, and so I will endeavor to engage with my counterpart once confirmed in the Ministry of Tourism and Wildlife to look into the issues that you have raised, because indeed there has to be coordination to make sure that any new models of conservation are in step with the need for good governance and sustainability, taking into account the interests of the conservancy adjacent communities. On the question of the Marsabit National Park, again, the question of human-wildlife conflict is a menace that is affecting our communities. The need to actualize the law on compensation. I will not delve much into that again because it is not within my docket, but I know I will be confronting that. And at the ministerial level, I would be keenly interested even to work closely with a colleague in charge of that particular area of concern. The Honorable Mukami, high population growth in our urban areas and the establishment of industries, some very harmful. We are currently confronted with a number of litigation around effects of environmentally unfriendly industrial developments that have happened in residential areas. This squarely falls under the National Environmental Management Agency, under my docket, and it is a question of really looking at the effectiveness of the processes that we are currently employing in environmental impact assessment to make sure that we do not compromise the quality of life of Kenyans. Because at the inception stages of every project, the question of proximity to human life has to be taken into account, especially industries which might be the subject of hazardous emissions. So I can assure you that it would be an area of keen concern to make sure that our environmental impact assessments are being employed in the proper manner. Honorable Wanyonyi, the question of collaboration between Kenya and its neighbors, very critical. We might come up with very good policies and climate actions within Kenya, but then the same actions get compromised because of the action or inaction of our neighbors. And that is the reason why we have regional and international fora where we engage on matters climate action. What I know I will be able to do is that Kenya, being the holder of the chairmanship of the Committee of African Heads of State and Government on Climate Change at the ministerial level, because Kenya is at the chairmanship, I know my role will be critical at the ministerial level. I will endeavor to create a rapport and good working relationship with my colleagues in the region at the ministerial level, once confirmed, again to be able to address these matters of critical concern. The East African Community is a forum again where these matters will be prosecuted at various levels, at the presidential level, ministerial level, where we can be able to find synergy in terms of the direction we take on climate action and environmental protection.
Yeah, I just want to let the appointee know that I am on the border. I get a lot of traffic of charcoal all the way from Uganda.
Yeah.
And they're actually destroying that area, coming to us. We are very strict. When you get the charcoal dealers, they tell you they are from Uganda. Yeah. So there's nothing actually stopping them from doing what you're doing. Thank you so much.
Resistance, yes. Next.
I actually have one more question.
From
three members.
Murugara,
three actually. Honorable Murugara, riverine afforestation. Yes, we can blame so many things on climate change, but within that climate change crisis is a huge percentage of our own contribution. I'm alive to that fact, Honorable Murugara, and I'm going to create a mechanism through which we can rally Kenyans to embrace environmental integrity, yeah, and behavioral change right from your own household, and that can be done. Yes, the issue of sand harvesting, again, we may hide our heads in the sand on matters sand harvesting, but it's actually a source of income for millions of Kenyans. But at what expense? Our rivers are drying up. We need to interrogate this. Again, this is a function under the county governments, but NEMA plays a critical role when it comes to, if there's need to look at, appropriate sand harvesting areas. I'm just thinking we need to engage seriously, and it is the same with the charcoal trade, where there's a ban, yet a huge percentage of our populace depend on this particular trade. So this I'm going to take head on, and we should have some clear direction, because we cannot continue destroying ourselves as we watch. Honorable Kosing, what I will be remembered for, I am focusing on two critical things: circular economy, to deal with our waste management menace. Greening Kenya, again, is going to be very big for me, and I will make sure that by the end of my tenure, everybody will remember me for these two. Honorable Mishi Mboko, the issue of mangrove forests, very critical. It has become a fragile ecosystem. When we talk about the biggest carbon sinks, mangrove forests come at the top, followed by bamboo and other tree species. Within the ambitious plan that the president has rolled out, at the key core of it is the need to reclaim our mangrove ecosystems because of the critical role they play. I am made to understand that one species of mangrove in the area of carbon sequestration is equal to about 10 terrestrial trees. So that's how important it is. On the question about baobab uprooting or cutting, I would be interested, once I get confirmed, kindly come to my office and brief me on this one, because we must take immediate action.
Do you mean illegal export?
Honorable Chair, at the moment,
some photos, yeah.
We have a total ban on logging, so it cannot be legal.
Actually, she's not talking of logging. She's talking of uprooting and then exporting live trees.
So I think it's one and the same thing.
That is the work of KEFIS, which is still under your ministry.
They term it biopiracy.
Yes.
Biopiracy.
Yes, I think it is still affecting our trees. Whether they cut, uproot, or fell, it's still destruction. And I would want to understand in which context that is happening. So, Honorable Mishi, please pray for me to get confirmed and come over and we tackle that.
You need to have vote more than the prayer.
I know. Finally, Honorable Chair, and I think this ties closely with the question raised by the Honorable Mokami on environmental impact assessments. And I think I have spoken to that in depth.
Give Daoud the last bite.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
I already gave you an opportunity.
Chair, Honorable Soipan has talked about air pollution. She's talked about water pollution. Honorable Soipan, what about noise pollution? There are bars and restaurants who play loud music in residential areas, not just in Nairobi, all over the country. So we need to know how that can be sorted out, because there must be some law regarding the timings and sound protection and all that. Thank you.
Emase, you'll be the last for now.
Thank you, Chair.
Again, being a devolved function, we must work closely in collaboration with the county governments to make sure that the licensing of some of these businesses have to take into cognizance the location, proximity to other establishments that may not. Somebody wrote me a text the other day saying that there is very loud music from a discotheque which has been constructed or established right next to a children's hospital. You know, so these are real issues that Honorable Dawood, again in very close collaboration with the different players, I will take up to ensure that we are well regulated and coordinated in how we do our planning. You know, setting up a discotheque next to a hospital or a church next to, you know, or a mosque for that matter, next to areas where, you know, pollution, noise pollution would be of concern to the people around there. We can really be able to plan ourselves well. Honorable Emase, the question of the human resource and making sure that I have a well-motivated team. As you would know, the docket is very wide with a lot of work, and this would be greatly compromised if I do not have the right manpower. For example, the Kenya Forest Service, we are talking about greening the country. The Kenya Forest Service is at the core of that ambitious program. I will be reviewing the current terms of engagement. I have already gotten reports about understaffing, and we'll be looking at the other welfare matters in collaboration with the Public Service Commission to make sure that, you know, as we become ambitious about tackling climate action, then we must have Kenyans owning the process, and least of all is the people who are working within the ministry. So thank you for raising that, and it will be a matter that I'll take up as of immediate concern. Thank you.
Thank you, Soipan. I'll give you 3 minutes to tell us your final wish.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. I take this opportunity once again to thank the members of the committee, starting with yourself, Mr. Speaker, and former colleagues. Yes, former, because I'm a member of the Senate. I'm still having a challenge, you know, understanding that I'm no longer a member of the National Assembly. I am very grateful for this chance and opportunity, and thank you for the questions raised. They have been of a great challenge, really, and just reminding me of the heavy responsibility on my shoulders, the matters that are very real, the globe over, which are subjects of the current geopolitics and the global recession, because again, Honorable Chair, there is a very intricate link between environmental issues, poverty, and the well-being of Kenyans. So I understand the monumental task ahead of me, and once confirmed, I'm looking forward to good working relations with the House, the National Assembly, to make sure that we push through some of the immediate legislative and policy issues that we require to actualize our plans. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We'll now release you to go to your other duties, and Sergeant, you can show the nominee the way out.
Na waziri mteule katika Wizara ya Mazingira Bi Soipan Tuya, ambaye ndiye anaondoka kwenye kiti hicho ambacho kimekaliwa na wengi kufikia sasa, akiwa ni waziri wa 12 kufika mbele ya kamati hii ya uteuzi kueleza ufahamu wake na uwezo wake wa kuweza kudumisha wizara hiyo ya mazingira. Masuala mengi yameibuka. La kwanza ni kwamba kama ilivyo ada, wanapofika mbele ya kamati hiyo ni kujieleza thamani ya mali walionayo, naye Soipan hapo amejieleza akisema kwamba thamani yake ama mali yake ina thamani ya shilingi milioni 150, akitaja tu baadhi tu ya masuala ambayo yamechangia pakubwa katika kupata hiyo mali yake. Masuala yaliyoibuliwa na wanachama wa kamati hiyo kuhusu mambo ya mazingira ni mengi yakiwa yanafungamana na lile jambo la tabia nchi, mabadiliko ya tabia nchi ama ukipenda climate change, wengi wakizungumzia jinsi ya mazingira yalivyotatizwa kutoka misitu kufikia mito na maeneo mbalimbali. Wabunge pia wameibua masuala kuhusu vile mwananchi ama Mkenya anavyohitajika kuendesha shughuli zake, pengine kama ni katika ukulima ama katika ni biashara mbalimbali, na jinsi ama mikakati iliyowekwa kuweza kukabiliana na mabadiliko ya tabia nchi. Wabunge wakiibua hisia wakisema kwamba masuala mengi ama hatua nyingi ambazo zimechukuliwa basi zimeonekana kwa mbali kama kumkandamiza yule mwananchi ama yule Mkenya ambaye amejaribu kufanya ukulima hapa na pale ama amejaribu kufanya uvuvi hapa na pale, lakini inaonekana kwamba katika zile hatua zinazochukuliwa kukabiliana na mabadiliko ya tabia nchi basi yamekuwa ni kama ambaye yanamkandamiza Mkenya, ukimtaka waziri ajieleze ni vipi atakavyoweza kuelezea bayana kwamba hapa ama njia hii ndio itakuwa mwafaka ya kukabiliana na tabia nchi na mabadiliko ya tabia nchi, na ni njia ipi ambayo itakuwa mwafaka kwa Mkenya ama yule mkulima ama yule mvuvi kuendeleza shughuli zake za kawaida na kujipatia kipato cha siku bila kutatizika kwa njia moja au nyingine. Kwa hivyo ni mengi yamezungumziwa hapo, waziri akisema kwamba kuna hili kongamano linalokuja katika mwezi wa Novemba la COP27, akisema atachukua hiyo hatua kwenda kueleza bayana changamoto ambazo Kenya zinapitia kutokana na mabadiliko ya tabia nchi, kizingatia kwamba Kenya haichangii pakubwa, lakini mataifa ya nje yamekuwa yakichangia pakubwa katika mabadiliko ya tabia nchi, na Kenya imekuwa ikipata changamoto kutokana na mabadiliko hayo. Kwa hivyo anasema kwamba atakuwa anaenda kuelezea pakubwa kwamba wanahitaji kusaidika vyema na kwamba Kenya inahitajika kupewa kipaumbele katika shughuli hizi zote, kiasi cha kwamba hakutakuwa na changamoto zote zinazopatikana humu nchini. Kwa hivyo ni baadhi tu ya masuala yaliyoibuka. Atakayekuwa anafika mbele ya kamati mida ya mchana watakapokuwa wamerudi kutoka kwa mapumziko haya ni waziri mteule wa Wizara ya Utalii, wanyama wa mbuga, vile vile anaitwa Penina Malonza, ndiye waziri mteule katika wizara hiyo. Atakuwa anafika mbele ya kamati hii baada ya mapumziko haya ama baada ya chakula cha mcha ambacho wanachama ama kamati hii imechukua mapumziko kwenda kupata chakula hicho. Kwa hivyo kwa sasa nakurudisha tu moja kwa moja hadi kwenye jumba letu la utangazaji KBC kwa matangazo zaidi na pia vipindi vyetu vya kawaida ikiwemo taarifa za Lunchtime News.